Bank Ferrick, The Mandalorian is headed to the big screen. We kind of knew that already, but now it's official. Jon Favreau is set to direct a new feature film featuring none other than everybody's favorite Beskar sporting space dad and his little buddy Grogu. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one, especially for Mando fans. So is this basically The Mandalorian Season 4? And why is it a movie and not on Disney+? The answer, of course, is simple. It's The Mandalorian. Everything is always all about the child, and this is his destiny. Last we saw of Din Djarin, he was sitting on his porch on Navarro watching his adopted son Din Grogu play with space frogs. For once, we got to see the good guy actually get a shot to be happy. But with this new Jon Favreau directed movie, it looks like all of that is about to get disrupted. The new film, so far officially titled The Mandalorian and Grogu, is supposed to go into production sometime this year, meaning 2026 is probably the earliest we'll likely see the finished product. Produced by Favreau, newly minted Chief Creative Officer of Lucasfilm Dave Filoni, and of course Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy, who is still very much their boss regardless of whatever did or did not happen on an episode of South Park. But I digress, of course. I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan, and Din Djarin and Grogu have become my favorite characters in the whole saga. This is good news. This is great news, actually. Right, young Boba?
Yep.
Thanks, buddy. I knew you'd back me up on this one.
Sure.
Anyway, I think this was always the plan for these characters, and it's more because of Grogu than it is for Mando, regardless of the drip or his ride. It's always been all about Grogu. I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute, so stick with me. The Mando movie is yet another new Star Wars feature film project Lucasfilm is adding to the production slate, which now includes James Mangold's Ancient Old Republic movie, Charmin Obaid-Chinoy's New Jedi Order movie, and we assume Dave Filoni's Heir to the Empire movie, which is not officially called that yet. That's just how we refer to it here in our sector of the galaxy. This is the part where we have to mention that Star Wars hasn't had a film in theaters since 2019. Putting that into perspective, the Marvel Cinematic Universe released no fewer than 10 feature films during that same period. Yes, Star Wars has been busy with streaming series and video game projects, but since The Rise of Skywalker, the brand has announced several projects that are now either stuck in development hell or have been shelved completely. For a while, there was a Kevin Feige Star Wars movie that was being talked about, but never got off the ground. Patty Jenkins was supposed to direct a Rogue Squadron movie and even did a cool announcement video about it after she got the gig, but that too is no longer a thing at Lucasfilm. So how confident should Star Wars fans be that this newly announced Mandalorian film will actually make it to theaters? Well, pretty confident, actually. This is Jon Favreau we're talking about. We mentioned the MCU earlier. Well, guess what? He started that.
Happy!
That's what I'm talking about.
He's still a part of that.
It was fun. I could have been more fun. I can be fun.
We'll hang out again.
He saved Christmas for the Avengers, for crying out loud.
Is that Happy?
No.
It's my opinion that Lucasfilm is looking for bangers in the movie theater, and so they turned to the guy with a bunch of bangers under his belt for the job. Also, let's not forget that Favreau and The Mandalorian basically carried the entire launch of Disney+. And all of this is interesting, sure, but again, I'm veering away from the main point here. This is all about Grogu. Din Grogu, sorry.
This is the way.
From both a lore perspective and a real-world business standpoint, Grogu is the he is the force that's driving all of this. Here's what I mean. Little Grogu, we know, is already 50 plus years old at this point, and based on what we know about how his species ages,
When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not.
this little guy is going to be around for a long, long time into the future of what we currently know as the Star Wars timeline. What this does is gives Lucasfilm a useful tool in joining different eras of that timeline together. And it's already happening. Check this out. As things are now, Din Grogu is tripping the light fantastic with Papa Din and their souped up N1 starfighter now almost a decade after the Empire fell at the Battle of Endor. Meanwhile, Filoni and Favreau have laid the breadcrumbs of how Grogu is connected to the eventual return of Emperor Sheev Palpatine some years later. So right there you have Grogu as a connecting thread to at least two major eras. And what about looking in the other direction? We've known since Mando Season 2 that Grogu was an Order 66 survivor, but in Season 3 we actually got the flashback of Jedi Master Kelleran Beck fighting to get Grogu out of the temple as not a master. Anakin Skywalker and the 501st Legion showed up to do a little bit of house cleaning. One character, three different eras, and that's just a start. Grogu's life could span centuries, and he could easily be a tying thread that connects pretty much everything through the time he eventually becomes one with the Force. whenever that's going to be. So Grogu is set to star in this new movie with Djarin, but that doesn't mean he won't also appear in at least 2 other Star Wars feature films Lucasfilm has in the works, assuming those get made. Throw out James Mangold's Old Republic Dawn of the Jedi movie, Grogu isn't appearing in that. I know he takes a long time to age, but that's just too long. So then we're left with Filoni's Heir to the Empire movie, which is already supposed to tie together the threads left dangling by the Disney Plus series. So that's Ahsoka, that's Book of Boba Fett, and that's The Mandalorian. We were already expecting that film to feature Din and Grogu, as they are right in that mix during that timeline. But then we've got Charmin Obaid-Chinoy's new Jedi Order movie, which already has Daisy Ridley on board to play Rey Skywalker, who will be working to rebuild the Jedi Order and the Temple from scratch after her lover boy Ben Solo got done with it. Anyway, Grogu should very well be in this movie too. If Rey is rebuilding the Jedi Order, Grogu would be uniquely placed as both a Padawan and one of the most experienced Force users in the galaxy. At this point, he would have survived Order 66, the Galactic Civil War, and the rise and fall of the First Order, for frack's sake. Think of the knowledge he'd be able to share with this new academy. He'd also be able to teach Rey how to hone that mysterious Force healing trick she showed off in Rise of Skywalker. And at the same time, he'd still be a kid because of the way he ages. Surely older than he is now by about 20 or 30 years based on when the new Rey film is supposed to take place on the timeline. Not a toddler, but definitely still in his youth. Trained by the Mandalorians, wearing Grogu-sized Mandalorian armor. We've all seen the drawings of this online already. This is the place to do that for real. And I know what you're thinking, because your thoughts betray you. What if Grogu dies before any of this happens? A valid question, to be sure, but that brings us to the real-world business side of this whole thing. Why in the world would Disney kill this child? Yes, Star Wars has definitely killed kids before, or actually let's just say the Chosen One did most of that. But what makes us think they'd spare this specific youngling? Because of the merchandise. Think of the merchandise. Star Wars movies have always been a big commercial for the merchandise, and Grogu is a cash cow, or a cash whatever his species even is. You get what I'm saying. Remember when The Mandalorian first hit in 2019, when after all the hype and build-up, and then in the first episode we realized what and who this show was really about? We got that first reveal of what we then called Baby Yoda, and boom, right there, we were hooked. And we were starved for cute official Grogu merch that didn't even exist yet because they hadn't made it to avoid spoilers. And now that he's here, he's not going anywhere. Plus, the optics of killing off an adorable little kid, the audience, including a bunch of other little kids, have gotten very attached to. Look, it's just a little distasteful for the mouse to do, you know what I'm saying? Cute merch armor may be even stronger than plot armor. Especially in this case. There's no way Disney is going to kill this little moneymaker this early in his career. Grogu is here to stay, and unless someone out there in the galaxy actually does eventually punch his little ticket, he's going to be around for centuries. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Grogu is the literal future of Star Wars. Count on it. All of these things said, the news about the Mando movie does leave a few questions behind, like what happens to The Mandalorian, the Disney Plus series, now that the next Mandalorian thing is going to be a big screen movie? Our best guess is that The Mandalorian and Grogu will take place of a Mandalorian Season 4, at least in the short term. If we ever do see a Mandalorian Season 4 on Disney Plus, it probably won't be at least until The Mandalorian and Grogu hits theaters, probably longer, if at all. My boss, IGN's Alex Simmons, mused that perhaps the show would shift focus to another Mandalorian, like Bo-Katan and her whole deal, for example, and I think that could be true, certainly after seeing her as the focus for much of The Mandalorian Season 3. But once again, I think this is only partially the answer we're looking for here. Grogu is that real answer. You'll remember that there was talk during Season 3 as Bo-Katan emerged as a major player in Dave Filoni's live-action plans, that perhaps the title The Mandalorian didn't refer to Din Djarin any longer, but rather the current Mandalorian of the moment, like Bo-Katan was in Season 3. This is speculation, this is my personal belief, but yes, the title The Mandalorian was never meant to focus on Din Djarin, but the replacement isn't just any Mandalorian. It's the one destined to be the greatest one of them all.
Grogu?
He's a temple-trained Jedi Padawan. He's a Mandalorian foundling. Mark my words, this is the next Mandalore the Great, the one who will eventually continue the legacy of the great Tar Vizsla, creator of the legendary Darksaber, and the first Mandalorian ever to be inducted into the Jedi Order. And remember that mythosaur Bo-Katan found lurking in the waters beneath the mines of Mandalore? Yeah, someone's gonna end up riding that motherfucker, and it's not Bo-Katan, it's not Boba Fett, And it's not Djarin, because it's Grogu. The Mandalorian was always about the most important Mandalorian there is, and that's Grogu, because he is him. He has always been him. In closing, this is why the Mandalorian's adventures were always going to get pushed to the big screen eventually. If Grogu is destined to become the greatest and most important Mandalorian in history, then wouldn't the small screen be too small for him? And he may be the smallest Mandalorian, but Master Yoda already warned us against thinking that way.
Judge me by my size, do you?
The small screen is simply too small for a character with a destiny as big as Grogu's, and that's why he always belonged on big movie screens. Like I said from the start, this is his destiny. Thanks for watching, and for more from the galaxy far, far away, or I guess it's galaxies now, right? Anyway, here's everything coming from Star Wars in 2024, so check that out, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.